Alright guys, this is Cryptrader again. I wanted to do a video on the new Medium article that you might or might not have seen from one of our community members named Sulla on Telegram. He's done part one of this, what was it, like a couple months ago?
Yeah, just published there on Christmas actually.
Right, and so the part two just came out today, and so I just wanted to have this podcast with him so he can kind of talk through it. For people that don't really have a numbers background or used to dealing with charts and graphs and stuff like that, and simulating different possibilities, using different equations and stuff like that. So I think it'll be helpful for you to go through today and kind of talk through it, and we can both discuss, some of the thought processes that you had. So first off, I just wanted to know, like, what is your background and how did you get into Digitex?
So my background is I'm a product design engineer. So I have a master's in mechanical and manufacturing engineering, where I did a small bit of research and then went into a product design manufacturing environment. I've been working as a product design engineer for the past 3 or 4 years now, and I got into cryptocurrency. One might say at the worst time possible. A good friend of mine was showing me all his gains, and I said, "Listen, I'm gonna jump in here with you. Show me where to go." He pointed me in the direction of Digitex, so I was lucky enough to pick up some Digitex in the ICO. After that, everything else tanked. Digitex, thankfully was locked up during all that chaos, and then when it came out onto the market and people could start buying it on Mercatox and whatnot, that's only when I really started digging into it. I saw the green arrows, and I said to myself, "What is this thing that I had blindly thrown my money into?" And then, ever since then, I've just been obsessed with it, following it the whole time, and I've been in crypto ever since. And it's getting to the point now where things are getting exciting. We're looking at a launch date in 3 weeks, and it's kind of primed and ready to go.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people got drawn in back in that 2018 run up. I was aware of it at that time, but I didn't really get involved with it until after the sell off, I think at the beginning of, I guess it was 2019. And that's when I really started getting interested in it, and I put out that little predictions video that I did back at that time, looking at some different scenarios, because I saw how much potential that it could have with that native token.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm really interested in this that you've done, just because it's hard to predict. There's so many different ways with models that you can use to try to forecast what future prices can be based on a lot of different variables. And so
agreed. And when I started to get into it, I dabbled my toe at the wrong time and kind of got burned. But Digitex was a bit of a saving grace, and since then I've been trying to figure out how do you quantify the underlying value of a token. And there's a lot of talk in the Telegram channel, and Zebra and others mentioning about the equation of exchange and the velocity of money. So I started doing a small bit of research and just reading into that, and just thought to myself, this looks like the right kind of way to quantify what Digitex could achieve in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think back in 2019 when I tried doing it, I was looking at the volume, trying to predict, based on volume, which I don't know how good of a method that was, and I like the idea of open interest. It makes sense, and so I guess we can just go ahead and start going through. If you want to go through like your executive summary, and then we can kind of go through some of the numbers and the equation that you used and all that.
Sure. Well, opening up the summary is kind of just an executive overview of what's contained within the report. It gives a top level view of the mathematics, how it might potentially govern token price, what I feel the biggest drivers would be, which is basically adoption of the exchange, holders creating a liquidity demand by not releasing tokens, and it's the balance between traders enjoying using the exchange, finding it profitable with no fees, and the supply being restricted versus that demand is what I believe is going to ultimately drive the price up, because it's a compulsory token. So if you want to get in and partake, you can't. There's no two ways about it. You got to go into the ETH and Bitcoin markets. You got to buy the coin, and ultimately that's what's going to drive price.
Yeah, no doubt.
So my feeling is that conservatively, if we look at it and we compare it to say the velocity of money and the equation of exchange, and we take a ambitious but potentially conservative look at maybe 10% of the current market. And I say ambitious and conservative because if we achieve 10% of the market, that's great for Digitex, but futures markets are estimated to grow in the future. So 10% of the current market isn't exactly 10% of the future market, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know that I was looking at that in 2019 too, which I'm sure it's changed now. I mean, the volume just keeps going up and up for futures. I mean, that's one of the main, in my opinion, one of the main use cases for cryptocurrency right now is just speculating. So many people get on these futures exchanges because they realized after 2017 you couldn't make these major gains anymore because we're in a bear market, and so all these people switched to futures to use 100x leverage to try to make up for that.
Exactly. Yeah. Where's your gain going to come from if the token's not going to the moon anymore? You gotta flip it on its head and gamble that it's going down. And so people are attracted to that because they see the way to make big winnings.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, in this I threw in this little disclosure. I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Do your own research. Be accountable for your own decisions. All that. But I believe in the project, and ultimately that's why I'm putting the effort in, and I'm here talking to you today.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people appreciate it because they know it has potential, but they don't really know how to think about it in the terms of like all the variables that could affect the price. And so I spent a lot of time just reading Telegram channels, looking at other people's opinions and thoughts, and there's a lot of smart people in the Telegram channels who do understand what they're talking about, and just being in those channels, you do pick up and learn a lot. And I was taking notes from certain things, and then if there was stuff, and for example equation of exchange, things I never had experience with, I'd then dig into them separately outside and try wrap my head around the variables. And I think it only really clicked for me once the exchange beta, the testnet launched. Once that launched and I got in and used it and got to look at the type of metrics that are available to us, that's when I kind of felt that I could fit in like a reasonable, or at least a considered estimate of where I think Digitex might go. Yeah, and of course, whenever we actually start getting that real live data in, it'll be much easier to do. I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
I can't wait to see real live data and start. I'm going to be checking into Digitex on the hour, taking a few numeric values down and monitoring it, make sure and see if I can map some sort of correlation between where it is actually going versus token price, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm super interested in that as well. It might take a couple months, if not 6 months, to maybe get that correlation, and at least to have some kind of confidence in something that could be predicting future price, based on the fundamentals. But I'm super interested in that as well.
So I then basically went into an overview, and this is a basic overview for people who maybe have only been introduced to Digitex and who don't know what it's all about, or you're coming into crypto and you're saying Digitex, how do I even buy that? Because the biggest struggle when most people start crypto is understanding how do you actually buy this stuff.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to outline the network of you take current cash, euros, US dollars, you go into the Bitcoin and US dollar ETH market, Coinbase, whatever it is, you buy your stable coins, you then go over to Mercatox, you use those to buy Digitex, and at the moment that's where it ends. You have people holding the coin, and that's where the network, the Digitex network, ends. But coming in 3 weeks, we're going to unlock the Digitex futures exchange. So coins are going to now have a use case, and things are going to change.
Yeah, for sure. That demand kicks in, and then when you have people trading, especially if they're uh, traders that are wanting to accumulate more and more Digitex and are going to be a little more stingy and not wanting to sell, that's just going to basically drop the supply even more. And so one of the things that I'm interested in too is because you have hold and stake there, which is basically just when you would draw from the exchange, keep it in your wallet.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that I'm interested in with future features within Digitex Exchange, is actually having ways to incentivize holding or staking, but not necessarily holding or staking like you receive staking rewards, but like something like what Adam had mentioned in the podcast that I did previously, or like the AMA he did where he was talking about trading bots. There'll be ways in the future where it'll drive the supply even more. So like if people are using trading bots, they lock it in these trading bots, and they're not going to want to take it out because the more that you have in there, the more that you'll make. And so I'm interested in those features down the road for Digitex as well.
Those features are undoubtedly going to just cause demand, and demand causes imbalance, and that raises token price. And like for me, I'm a kind of speculative investor right now, so I'm looking for an increased token price. I'm learning trading, and I hope to take a part of that balance into the Digitex Futures Exchange to throw my hand at trading. But anything that the team can develop that's going to create a demand for tokens is going to drive the price up. Like tournaments as an example, if they're running daily tournaments, that's a daily quantity of Digitex that's going to be invested into that tournament. Things like you said, if you can do trading, kind of a trading guru, so to speak, where you can release your funds to someone like yourself, Cryptrader, who's experienced in trading, and maybe that's another way to hold up tokens and create demand. It's like all these little ideas they seem small, but it's like Al Pacino said, inch by inch, play by play, and it's all just going to add together. Like.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways that they can create more demand on there, other than just normal future trading on the ladder. And so like you said, like copy trading, that's one big one. Like eToro is big with copy trading. What's the other one? Hedge Trade, that's in crypto. I haven't really checked that out, but I understand the model, or the concept behind it, which makes sense. So it's definitely something that could add more demand in the future.
Exactly. Regarding variables, I mean, we can dig into some of the background of the equation that I developed, if that's what you want to dig into, if you think people would be interested in hearing my take on the equation of exchange and how I believe it might correlate to Digitex's growth in the future.
Yeah, I think that would be good if we go through those.
So I mean, it's taken from it's built around this equation, the equation of exchange, which is traditional monetary economics. And if you consider Digitex or Bitcoin or all these things, they're kind of just another currency, to be like a layman's terms. And if we can apply the equation of exchange to Digitex in a way that can maybe analyze the balance of the supply and demand for the token, to try and consider the potential growth and where we might find key variables that will drive this growth for Digitex. So if I just jump straight into how Digitex is built and some of the key variables within what I call the Digitex ecosystem, and try address how these can fall in line with what the equation of exchange outlines. So the first variable to consider is basically monetary supply, and that's how much Digitex is there. At the moment, it's 1 billion Digitex. These numbers might be slightly off from the time I wrote this to where it is now with the treasury sale release, but in and around the region of 79 to 80% of the total Digitex are currently in circulation. This is going to increase to 90% by June 2021. So the treasury sales are on a scheduled release, and that's going to release more tokens on a set basis. But if you consider the monetary supply for Digitex, it's not all available money, because you have holders, you have what we just discussed there, stakers, which could be any form of way to lock up coins and reduce supply, and you have traders. So, a speculative investor like myself, I'm going to buy tokens and I'm going to hold them until they reach a certain point that I say to myself, yeah, I've made the money I want to make. Like, I'm happy to capitalize on this and walk away. For each person that could be different. Some people it could be 20 cents, some people 50, other people with with their most ambitions of Lamborghinis and Ferraris might be waiting for $10. Regardless, it's each person who is a speculative investor is going to be waiting for some sort of sell point. So they're going to take those Digitex out of the available circulation, and they're going to hold them until that price point is met.
Right.
So also traders, for example, traders are gonna have a holding on the Digitex Futures Exchange network, and any tokens that are currently sitting on the network are not available to be bought and sold in the ETH and Bitcoin marketplace. So that's just another way of reducing what I call the available supply of Digitex. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, what I'm postulating here is that the monetary supply, which is basically the total circulatory supply minus the sum of how much are on the trading accounts, how many Digitex are locked up in some form of what we'll call, for the sake of a better word, staking, how much is locked up with holders who are stubbornly and greedily holding on to these tokens in the event that they're worth a larger sum of money than what they invested for them.
Yeah.
And the question is, like, how do you quantify this? With holders, it's a bit more difficult. Holders is maybe we can measure the amount of wallets now versus the amount of wallets or in the future. It's at the moment in the model I've just put a varying number of holders of holder percentage to try account for this number. Okay, but there's probably better ways in the future to empirically collect that data. Traders, on the other hand, is a bit easier. So what's trading on the Digitex Futures Exchange is essentially your open interests by your average contract value, divided by your leverage, and what I've thrown in there is a trader coefficient of like what percentage of your holdings do you hold in open interest versus in your trading balance for making positions on the fly. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's basically how much margin is in open positions compared to how much you're holding in your balance.
Yes, exactly. So you might have a rule where you hold half your margin in your balance versus half your margin on your open interest, or you might have a rule where you hold 10 times as much. So it's just dependent on each person's own criteria. At the moment, I've essentially left the trader's coefficient low at 1 or 2 to plot these, but we did a poll in Telegram and some people were putting a number in there for 10. So that's going to vary significantly realistically in the future. So that's just a ratio of basically your trading account balance currently in open positions to your total trading account balance. I've applied a holder's constant, and eventually what I'm getting at here is your available monetary supply is your total circulation multiplied by your holder's constant, which is less than 1, so it reduces the supply, and then you subtract your trader's constant. And I have neglected stakers simply because it's all ideas at the moment and there's nothing there for it's not gonna immediately impact the Digitex's price.
Yeah, and I think most people are interested in the short to medium term predictions anyway, I guess. And so that's where it wouldn't really matter about the staking with a holder constant, I guess, because there's nothing in the pipeline soon, I guess, that would be locking away more tokens.
Exactly, yeah. Then the next variable that I tried to consider is the velocity of the Digitex token. Now this is how fast Digitex is exchanging hands in ETH and Bitcoin markets. Yeah. So it's how much people are coming in and out of Digitex. Okay. So a reduced velocity means that people want to hold Digitex. So if there's more people holding, if there's more people trading, less people are going to be getting in and out of Digitex. Now, traders will be trading profits in and out of Digitex, but holders will be restricting supply. So it's kind of like reducing the velocity is basically showing that there's an increased demand. So essentially, this is what I've suggested in order to quantify this is that the sum of the Digitex transactions on Bitcoin and art markets over the total circulating supply of Digitex will give you your velocity of how much people want to enter and exit Digitex as a token, whether it's for holding or for use on the exchange. So keeping an eye on this in the future will be a good way to gauge, it'll be a good way to gauge the demand for Digitex. If you see that this variable is getting smaller, you know that more people are wanting to hold Digitex.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Next is probably what I found the most difficult is trying to figure out what the average price level of goods are, because it's based on the equation of exchange. So it's equating, the cost level of goods in a economy, let's say. But when I look at Digitex, it's what's the cost of goods on the Digitex platform, and for me, can be quantified by margin. So margin is like what's your lowest possible entrance onto Digitex? Like what do you spend? What do you put on the table to get into a trade? And it's your margin, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're willing to lose. That's what comes out of your bank and goes onto the books. So Digitex knowledge base defines margin as the amount required in order to enter a position. So this is the equation taken from Digitex's knowledge base on how to calculate margin, and you see that it's dependent on tick value, Bitcoin price, and leverage. So to break margin down, you need to find your tick value, your Bitcoin price in US dollars, and your leverage. Applying this and finding your average margin is then the average cost of entering into the Digitex platform. It's the average that each user is putting down on the table in order to enter into trades on the platform. Basically, I go through here that margin is affected by tick size, it's affected by the Digitex price, and it's affected by the cost of Bitcoin. As Bitcoin rises, you see that it corresponds to an increased minimum contract value. As Bitcoin increases in value, we see margin requirement per contract increase, and we also see that the number of contracts required to fill a trading position decrease. So 2 and 3 cancel each other out, but the key point is that as Bitcoin increases in value, so too does margin. I can skip through this because there's a bit of debate on this, and it's probably not relevant to what we're discussing now. But what is relevant is that I take the average cost of goods of Digitex to be the average margin per contract. So ultimately, if you can find your average margin per contract across your time frame, and then take the final variable into account, which is the number of transactions on DFE, you know how much money, a quantifiable amount of money in fiat terms is being processed or used by the exchange, because you have your average margin and the number of transactions. So it will give you a gauge of if you see that number rising, you know that your use and demand in Digitex is rising. Yeah. So I mean that's where I got with the way to try and quantify the demand and actual based on qualitative use of Digitex. And then, just applying these into the equation, we see that, M is the total number of available Digitex. V is the velocity of Digitex, of people entering and exiting of Digitex positions. P becomes the average margin of the trade, and Q, is the total number of transactions processed on the DFE. So, plugging that in, it becomes a seesaw where the variable buried inside there is the Digitex price, and what I've done is I've balanced this with the Digitex price. So as P and Q increases to unbalance MV, the price of Digitex is the variable embedded in that equation that balances the supply with the demand.
Yeah.
This all gets very long, and and I've broken it down in a MATLAB script and plotted it. I didn't really want to go into the breakdown of the MATLAB scripts because I thought it would just kind of scare people off. So
yeah, probably would be a little too much,
Yeah.
I think.
yeah, so I got to here and I just decided maybe I'll leave that for another day, or for if somebody's really interested, they can shoot me a message and say, hey man, what's the story with that? Let me see that script, But off topic, it's built up in a script, and I plotted this as just as a quick gauge of where, if this equation is held, and if we get 10% of the market share at the time of writing this, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I have it at $10 million worth of open interests.
10%? You're saying 10% of the overall?
10% of the overall market share of futures, December 2019, as of December 2019. If
Okay.
this is the growth of Digitex based on that estimate.
Okay, that makes sense. So we got 2 million, 4 million, 6 million, 8 million, all the way to 10 million. So 10% is the farthest on the right on the x-axis, which is 10 million.
Yeah.
And then we got a fifth of that, which is 2 million, the first tick, and that would put us, okay.
Bear in mind that there's a lot of variables in here, like leverage used and estimate margins, and so the margin comes from the average leverage used, but there's a lot of variables here that I'm really keen on Digitex launching and tracking to get some better, more accurate figures to pop into this.
Yeah, I think open interest should be pretty easy to get. I think that it will fluctuate a lot, just based on the fact that it is scalping, so the open interest will fluctuate. But then if you just got like a daily average, which looks like what you're doing, average daily open interest, which should be accurate enough to be able to use in this model. And so I guess I could see where you could have had like multiple trend lines, I guess, with like a range of different variables, or I'm not exactly sure how you had it set up to calculate the price from the open interest, but if you had a range of different, like say leverages, would you end up with like multiple trend lines on this graph, where it would be like one would be based on this leverage, the other trend line would be based on this, and then you have like a window maybe?
I could absolutely do that, yeah.
That would be kind of interesting to see, like a range between like, I don't know, like a leverage of 10 to 30 or something, and maybe just iterate it by like 5 or something, so you end up with like 4 or 5 trend lines based on that. And then I don't even know what all other variables were there that could be I guess iterated through.
If I jump up to here, we have the holders percentage. I haven't mentioned the other article that I posted. I did a breakdown of these variables to show how they affect the price as they fluctuate from a certain percent. For example, the holder percentage from say 20 to 40%.
Yeah.
So you'll see how it affects price. But yeah, I could definitely plot it as a constant, but multiple constants having multiple trend lines on the same graph, and it'll show at a leverage of, let's say, 5, you're going to have a higher margin. Interesting.
Yeah, so that would be nice to see, and that way you can get somewhat of a range and a window to see like what does it take to get to like $1 or something like that.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll add that onto a little to-do list, because that'd be really interesting to see.
But I really like the way that this is presented. It makes sense. I always like looking at graphs and thinking about it.
I love looking at $10 projections for Digitex, man. I look at them all day.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that's kind of where I finished up at Christmas, and it's just then to iterate. It's 10% of the total open interests on Bitcoin markets held by Digitex top 4 exchange competitors at the time.
Yeah, and 10% of the total open interest, like before we had that drop, was like something crazy. It was like over $1 billion, I think, just on BitMEX.
Yeah, again, like this could have just been so I took these numbers from just checking it the day that I was writing this. So that could have been a day of low interest, high interest, you know, there's no telling.
Yeah, but like you said earlier, I mean, it's going to grow anyway over time. So like if you, you know, obviously the average daily open interest should grow, you know, just in the year in 2019, I'm sure it's on average went up quite a bit just from the growth in futures. So we could expect, you know, 10% might not be 10 million, and, you know, 6 months it could be 20, 30, 40, 50 million, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And so
then to reach this same point, you're looking for a lower percentage, and that's even better.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to put something together. I actually just wanted to get my own projection of what I think it might be on paper. And, you know, once I got it on paper for myself, I wanted to know whether I think this makes sense and whether I think this, you know, has potential to keep going. And once I finished it, I was so excited that I just turned around to my mate Baker, Owen, as you all know, and I just went, Baker, have a look at this, man. Just like, I have to share this with people, like, so yeah. That's why I put it all together.
I think it's taken a while for people to like understand it, or some people probably still don't understand this, the whole point of this, but I actually don't completely understand it myself, just because there's a lot going into it. And then
essentially what I'm trying to do is find a balance between supply and demand. And what I see as supply is, you know, it's like if you consider a shop, you know, what can you go in and buy? You know, what have they a supply of? You know, I walk into a shop and, you know, it doesn't make a difference if somebody at home has 100 tins of beans. If I can't buy them in the shop can't supply it to me, yeah?
Yeah.
Somebody else has already come in and bought 100 tins of beans, you know? So if I walk into a shop and they have 2 tins of beans, but there's 6 or 7 of us who want to buy it, the shopkeeper might say, well, I'll tell you what, let's do a bidding war, guys. The beans might cost $1 by themselves, but because 7 of you want to buy 2 tins, who's willing to pay the most? So the way I see it is, there's supply and then there's demand, and I've been trying to figure out how do we quantify the balance between the demand for Digitex and what's available to people. So I took the total circulatory supply and I said, well, if people are holding it, it's, you know, it's not available in supply until they decide to sell. And if people are using it, it's not available in supply until they're starting to sell. Okay. Mm-hmm. How do we quantify holders? How do we quantify people using the token? So once you take them out of circulation and then look at the Digitex and F markets, it comes down to, you know, if you want to enter into Digitex, what's the available supply for you to enter, and how does that balance against the demand to use it? This one that I published today, after the launch was announced, I just stopped looking at Digitex. I took a step back because I didn't want to be counting the days down for like 3 months.
Yeah, so I know the feeling.
I knew that I was just so sucked into it that I wanted to take some time away from it to just come back to it when I was ready. And I thought, you know, the start of April was the perfect time. So once they announced the launch, I thought it was brilliant to have there's a countdown now, and, you know, where we are from here to April is, you know, not going to change very much, other than the exchange is just going to be even better. So
right.
I kind of took a step back till April, and then I came back and got my head back into it and said, well, where are we today and where do we want to go tomorrow? And that's where I kind of decided to draft this as well. Yeah, so this one is it just talks about, you know, where we are today and where Digitex is about to go. And, you know, right now, you know, I touch on how the global state of affairs is, and things are uncertain. You know, if you look at the stock markets and, you know, everything else, you know, people are losing their jobs, companies can't deliver, everyone's on lockdown, and although it all seems very, you know, doomsday, you know, like you know, financial Armageddon. Mm-hmm. I actually think it's a good thing for Digitex, and the reason I think that is probably for 2 or 3 main reasons, and it's that people are spending more time at home on their computers. Like right now, you and I are having a Skype call. You know, Netflix have reduced their streaming quality because there's so many people overloading their servers. People are tuned into the internet more. So now when Digitex start running their marketing campaign, I just feel like, you know, they're more likely to get their content in front of people because people are spending more time in the domain where their content is going to be released.
Yeah, you got a lot of people bored out of their mind, and so their attention is all on social media and stuff like that. So it's, yeah, I can see where that's a good time to get it out in front of people when they have a lot of time on their hands.
Yeah, exactly. And in this, everyone's you know, regular daily routine and habits have been thrown out of sync, you know. So everyone's starting new habits, and that's really strong because if you start a new habit, it's something that you can carry forward. So if somebody's new habit happens to be trading, which, you know, I've started practicing a lot more trading since this has all happened. So, you know, it's not far-fetched to think that there's a lot of other people out there who have started, you know, seeing the financial kind of situation and looking for other opportunities, and I think Digitex have the opportunity to capitalize on that. I think they're primed for it because the second reason, you know, it's literally a machine built to make money on volatility. Like right now, volume's going up, trading's going up. You know, from my perspective, it's an opportunity for Digitex to launch into a market that's primed and ready for exchanges. Like it's the volume and the trading isn't going to disappear. So it's not as if Digitex's customer base or target market is going to disappear. It's only going to grow. So it's kind of like it's the perfect product in a perfect kind of messed up economic system, ready to go. Like so. Yeah. Not to mention the fact that Digitex built a outrageously stunning exchange.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say it's probably it is the most user-friendly exchange in my experience, especially for scalping, because of that ladder interface. And I remember what I was going to say earlier about Digitex is, to me, I think it'll target a market that hasn't really even been targeted yet within crypto. I mean, you have a lot of people that use futures, but even on some of the bigger ones now that have gotten more user-friendly, it's still not super user-friendly, you know, for the average person. And I don't know that they really target a certain like demographic, I guess, within crypto or even outside of crypto to learn how to trade and actually start using something. And I think Digitex has got like the UI for that, and I think they'll be targeting like a market that's probably not even tapped into yet.
And that's, like I don't know their marketing plan, I don't know the marketing strategy, but I mean, if they're doing stuff like that in my mind, it makes sense, especially with the knowledge base they have for learning. You know, they're putting together a social platform, which is, for me, that's amazing. Like I think that's a really smart and innovative tool that a lot of, like, no other competitors will have that. So in terms of the actual product, the end product is, in my mind, very good. The conditions are good, and it's you know, targeting a demographic of people potentially who are bored and they're sitting at home looking for something new to do, you know.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
And then that's where we're at today, and I thought, you know, well, where do we see Digitex going tomorrow? And you know, Digitex is going to launch in 3 weeks, and everything that has happened before that is null and void. You know, there's no point looking at the past correlations of Digitex because it's going to turn into a whole new beast. You know?
Yeah.
As of its launch date, it's transitioning from a speculative coin where people say, hey, once this thing's up and running, it's going to be brilliant. But now it's going to be up and running. You know, that's the difference. It's no longer going to be speculation. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be putting its money where its mouth is. And if you're looking at the past performance of Digitex, expecting it to operate the same way, you're looking at the wake of your ship trying to steer through a storm. Like, you know, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, just roughly, I think that we've kind of seen that first wave where there was a chart I shared in the trader chat the other day, and I've seen it posted other places too. It just shows like how you can expect any kind of new technology. You know, you have the really early people that are like the innovators, you know, that get in early, people that
Yeah.
bought ICO, you know, and then you have that first big run up, and then it comes crashing down because of the expectations, and then we kind of get to this point where, you know, now that the technology's here, everybody getting in now are the early adopters, about to ride the big wave of demand, you know, for this actual technology that's coming. So I think that that's interesting looking at it that way. And so we could expect, you know, this being the start of the, you know, the big adoption wave.
Yeah, it's trying to cross the chasm, you know. Digitex now needs to, so what you say there is 100%, and the early adopters typically they're 13% of your market. You know, the next 30% are the early majority. Okay, and you know, to win over the early majority, they need to see it functional. So once Digitex launches this exchange and proves that it's functional, you know, it alleviates the doubts. It's like bowling, you know. Once you knock over the first pin, the rest of them are going to follow. And like I categorize myself as an early adopter. You know, I think you're probably in the same boat, and I think all of us who've sat in this boat for 2 years, we're all in the same boat. And once we win over that vast majority, where, you know, Digitex as a company and as an exchange is going to really benefit from it. So, you know, looking at the overview, the compulsory tokens going to bring people in, and then it boils down to supply and demand, and this part of supply and demand is my attempt to explain my previous report in a more easy to follow manner, because I know there was a lot in the previous report, even what we covered, and you know, probably still doesn't make sense. So it's just me trying to get my thoughts down in a more clear and precise manner for people to understand. And essentially it all boils down to supply and demand. And what I'm saying is that, you know, once Digitex Futures Exchange launches 3 weeks from now, you're going to see adoption start to grow, because it's growing from zero. So it's going to grow regardless. As we're all onboarded, as you know, there's 10,000 or so people who hold Digitex in wallets, probably more. And you know, those people are going to want to get onto the exchange, and even if they put 1 or 2% of their current balance onto that exchange, where we're going to see growth. So volume will start to grow, and once the platform proves that it's trustworthy and that it alleviates doubts from, you know, the doubtful investors, then trust starts to grow, and you know, circulating supply reduces as more people use it, and the Digitex token price is going to have to grow to facilitate the demand.
Yeah, and the biggest, I guess the most bullish aspect to me is it's tied in with the native token aspect, but it's not just the fact there's a native token, it's just the fact that that native token is going to get so much publicity too when it's going up. So like, it's almost like a positive feedback loop where, you know, the price goes up, you have all these people seeing the price come up or go up, and so it's like the perfect marketing tool, because you have this token that's just going up, you know, skyrocketing because of the demand, draws even more people in, and gets more interest within the crypto community to come on and try it out, or at least just buy some to speculate on it. Yeah. And so it's like a positive feedback, and so then that's really like the best tool in my mind for the marketing of Digitex. Just the fact that native token, once the demand comes in, it'll just be a positive feedback, and it just keeps going and going and going.
Once that green candle and that 24-hour change comes up on CMC, that's the best marketing you can get for Digitex.
Yeah, definitely. That's what everybody's looking at, especially all the speculators out there. And so I think it'll turn a lot of those speculators even into traders when they get on there and start using it.
Yeah, and from my perspective, like, if you're bullish on Bitcoin, you should be bullish on Digitex, because, you know, as Bitcoin grows in value, so like Digitex is linked to in the future, Digitex will be linked to the Bitcoin price, because as Bitcoin grows in value and volume grows on Bitcoin, Digitex, if it holds a certain market share, will grow with that.
Yeah, it's just the same way with it's the same concept as the open interest, I guess, in that regard.
Yeah, it's the exact same. and then remembering that margin of Digitex is based on the price of Bitcoin. But yes, running into this, it's a balance of supply and demand, and I bring the previous model in and say that, this time we've modeled a scenario relating to Digitex growing from $1 million to 10 million worth of open interest on the platform, and in an attempt to show people how each variable reacts, where the first plot imagines that you have no holders, okay? No one's staking the product, and it's just people are just using these tokens to trade on the exchange. So it's saying that once Digitex opens its doors, the entire supply, like the team supply, everyone's supply, is spread amongst the Digitex Futures Exchange and the Bitcoin and ETH markets for getting in and out of Digitex. So the supply reduces as more open interests are on the exchange. And if you imagine that some of this growth in open interests comes from new Digitex users, they have to buy from the ETH and Bitcoin markets. Yeah. So new users will have to buy from current users. Current users are generating a demand on the exchange. New users want to get in and buy from current users. So the demand is growing because there's new users wanting to join in, but the supply is reducing because people are using the exchange.
Yeah.
So what this shows is that if average open interests can grow, say organically from 1 million to 10 million with no holders, no, like it's a constant velocity, there's no change in there's no changes from holders, and there's no changes from velocity or stakers or any of these things that are going to restrict supply, you're going to see growth. It's only going to, it's not going to grow as exponentially, but it shows that for keeping everything constant and even just bringing in new users who have to buy from previous units, you're going to see growth because you're restricting supply with an increased demand.
Yeah.
But in reality, you have speculative holders. So holders play a huge part. They're gonna restrict the supply, and then the ratio of supply to demand is gonna increase for demand significantly because holders they're holding and restricting the supply. In addition, if more tokens are being held, and your velocities isn't going to stay constant, because holders are restricting the supply, and your velocity is your amount of transactions divided by total supply. So it's not going to stay constant, and it's going to affect prices. So once you see holders and growing traders on the exchange, that's when things start to get interesting, in my opinion. So what we're trying to map here on this graph is the relationship between holders and token price. What we're saying is that as we increase our holder percentage from 20 to 45%, it results in a reduction of the token velocity because more people are holding the token. So the token is in a higher demand because people want to hold it, and that reduces the supply. So once the supply reduces, it results in an imbalance between the supply and demand, and that in effect drives up token price.
Yeah, and most people should already know this, I guess, intuitively, but this just gives you kind of like a model of what that looks like and how it affects price.
A visual representation, so to speak, so you can see that on the x-axis down below that your token price is going to increase as your holder percentage increases, and another effect is that once more people are holding it, your token velocity will go down because there's less available in circulation as there's a bigger demand to hold the token.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and it's just about, I'm not saying that at 47.5% holders it's going to be $1.50. It's just showing the relationship between an increase in holding. It's the impact that holders have on driving the value of Digitex, because a holder represents somebody who believes in the project and is basically another demand to own Digitex.
Yeah, and that's where between demand, which obviously the demand's going to be the main portion of causing people to hold their Digitex in trading accounts, and then
you always hear of like projects that offer staking, you know, coins that offer staking, and that's always a way to increase the holder percentage as well.
Yeah, like if you think about all different methods of increasing your demand, like you said, staking or you know, copy trading, or even burning tokens. Burning tokens is just reducing supply, and what does that do? It drives up price. So once holders are holding, they're reducing the supply, and it's driving up price. And it's fundamentally what people see, but this is just a way to, you know, empirically put a graph in front of you and say, you know, if you hold your coins longer and make it more difficult for people to enter, your coins are going to be worth more.
Yep. All right, we can go ahead and go to the next one, I guess, or keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, after that, it's basically showing that, you know, restricting the supply with increasing demand and open interest, that's driving the token price on this axis. But what we haven't factored in is Q, and Q is essentially how many contracts are being executed on the Digitex futures exchange. And that's this is where I'm trying to wrap all the variables together and show people that, you know, Digitex is built on a combination of variables, and once you map these together, you're going to see the real underlying value of Digitex. I mean, if we can get transactions, which is essentially volume. I know you mentioned before that you were trying to look at the volume of Digitex to correlate the price, and you know, I believe that it absolutely is, because your volume kind of underlines how many trades are happening and what the demand is to use that platform.
Yeah, and so in this case, it looks like it goes up fairly. It looks like a what is that? Like a natural log curve? Is that what that is? Looks like.
Yeah.
Comes up and then asymptotically looks like it levels off for the transactions anyway. And the same thing for token velocity, I guess. They're both just indirectly related.
Yeah, and it's I didn't want to bring up asymptotically and exponentially. I actually deleted that out of the report because I thought people would be thinking that I'm trying to you know, overemphasize the value of it. But like if you consider transactions in DFE, if you consider this increasing, and if you consider open interest increasing, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In order to match that and plot it, you know, the Digitex token price is going to have to expand out as well. Yeah, this axis is going to have to expand out to map the entire curve. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now just try imagine mapping that price on a exponential or asymptotic curve. Like it's the price is going to go ludicrous. Like.
Oh yeah, for sure. It might not be so surprising, you know, 2 or 3 years from now, but yeah, definitely right now it's like $10 token just seems outlandish to a lot of people.
I know, and then like just to put it in perspective, when you look at other tokens like BNB and they're sitting at $13, it's like, you know, maybe it's not too outlandish.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it hit $40, I believe, which it's got, you know, obviously a different circulating supply, but it hit like, I think $40 last year.
Yeah, I think its circulating supply is something like 150 million, so it's maybe a quarter of Digitex's, but it's not the same, you know, it's not the same fundamentals, so it's not like comparing apples with apples here. So
yeah, it's got like a quarter of the supply, but it's also got, you know, a tenth
it's
of
just
the demand.
Reduced fees. Yeah, exactly. So it's not a direct comparison. Yeah, this is the report and where it's at, and I was just trying to highlight that, you know, Digitex is a I'm trying to put a quantitative way to map the underlying value of Digitex, and I think that, you know, some key variables, whether or not this model is right, I think the underlying key variables are there'll be some relationship amongst those variables that will map the price.
Yeah, and it's one thing, you know, after launch, we'll be able to utilize these models and then actually have, I guess, empirical data at that point and start getting a better forecast, I guess, going forward for everything.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully.
Let's see. I think that's probably good. We've been going for like an hour. Well, I appreciate the time, Sulla, for coming on and talking through this. I know everybody that's very interested in Digitex and wants to know where the potential price point could be in the future, is going to enjoy this video.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, we're all invested in the same thing. We're all looking for the same outcome. So if people are interested, all the better.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate it.